in the physical therapy assistant program, we deliver content in lots of ways: videos, lectures, hands-on. Recently, in the last 3 years, I purposely find video clips where the person delivering the information is not the typical white male or white female that most videos were used before. So sometimes I might use an Indian person of Indian nature or culture that will deliver the information, and the students, you can see their faces, trying to understand what the person is delivering. They might ask for me to repeat the video again. So just getting them used to different dialects, different cultures. Our lab practicals, I now write them where they are treating people of different religion, different sexuality, different socioeconomic status. And I also do fun things where I dress like them and they have to treat me. I might come in with a mini skirt one day and I have to do therapy. I might come in with lots of garments on my clothing. I might come in and say, you can only treat me in my room and I only want a male to treat me. And they have to problem solve through those situations to get them ready to go out into the real world and do their clinical experiences.
In our program, that introductory class that all of the business students take, we were thinking about changing textbooks a couple of years ago, and then we were invited to a discussion with the author of the textbook that we had. And the author started telling us about all the changes that they were making that would have more inclusion and diversity in the materials and the textbook itself, and that he would have some recommendations to include in our classrooms. So we decided to stay. That was one of the very encouraging factors for sticking with that textbook. And he really followed through. We have similar items as far as videos with depicting people of all sorts of backgrounds, changing names of people in the examples in the textbook that represent people from lots of different cultures. When referring to experts come from different backgrounds. And I've really noticed a huge difference in the way that it's represented in that class, and I've been able to follow that through in some of my other classes where the textbooks haven't been proactive to change my own names, to call on different experts, to pull up pictures of people when they do look different so that it's not just a name, so that the students get that interaction. I also teach in the business programs. We have a course that's called Cultural Diversity. So we have students who sometimes say they don't want to take the course, but generally when they're done, they have appreciated the experience. And I've had people who told me that they thought it would be an easy course because they thought they knew a lot about diversity and then found out that there was a lot to learn. So we have found that it is incredibly important. We don't know what business they're going to end up with in our programs, but we know wherever they go, they're going to be dealing with people across the nation and across the world, and they have to have some comfort level with people of different backgrounds. In my cultural diversity class, I think some of the most important moments that people have is in the topic about weight and appearance. Because they feel really comfortable saying that they don't discriminate and they don't have biases against people in other areas. But in that one, a lot of people are shocked to realize that they do have those sorts of biases in weight and appearance. Sometimes it's tattoos, sometimes it's earrings, sometimes it's older people who wear high-waisted pants. And so I think that one really gets to students. And they're like, oh, okay, so we're not just talking about nationality, we're talking about all sorts of diversity.
The biggest thing is being able to disaggregate the data. We've got a committee, Equity and Student Outcomes, that really dives in as much as we can to look at where are the gaps between student groups, how can we improve that, finding a lot of data mining, a lot of looking at, okay, what is the data saying, what is it telling us where those gaps are, and then from there, working back and say, okay, how can we find a policy? How can we improve a procedure to really help improve these? So, I think that would be the biggest thing, and we've done quite a bit of that. One of the things that we were able to look at is one of our local high schools has maybe a different racial and ethnic makeup than a lot of our other area high schools. So finding that, looking at that, and then being able to make adjustments in how we're recruiting those students, how we may be advising them through our College Credit Plus program, and just finding little tidbits like that help us adjust how we're doing things to help move things forward better, I guess.
We do work with all sorts of students, and enrollment services in particular, I think, certainly does a good job as far as like with marketing materials and making sure that we are addressing diversity and getting that information out. We're working with making sure, like with photographs in particular that go out into our marketing materials, that we are promoting or welcoming, I guess, diversity. They do a good job with that, I think. As far as issues that we've seen at the Welcome Center, we really haven't seen any issues. Recently, one thing has come up, and I think it's being addressed rather quickly, is gender neutral, like restrooms, for example. We've had a lot of questions about that, and I know that that's currently being addressed.
So if we're trying to teach students about DEI or make it a better experience for them, certainly selection of course materials is important. So trying to make sure that whatever I'm using is representative as possible. In psychology, there's just a tremendous emphasis on sociocultural theory, so cultural diversity, because it's all about understanding individual differences, why people think differently, behave differently. So we're always trying to push that to help students be more open-minded, or to try to at least pause before making a judgment. In psychology, implicit bias, or sometimes it's called the unconscious bias, that's sometimes we'll have the students take that test just to kind of see where they may have biases against maybe race or weight or religious background or what have you. At the college level, I think the college has been doing a lot in the last 5 to 6 years. We've had a DEI committee since 2017, and it's influenced things like equity is one of the cornerstones of our current strategic plan. Last year, we had a 4 disciplines of excellence. It's like a college-wide project, and its focus was on DEI.
I work a lot with the Pathways to Engineering program, which existed well before CCP. And so for a while there, if a high school student wanted to get college credit, it was the best, if not the only way to do it, was through the Pathways to Engineering program. And so I feel like I saw a more diverse student population before CCP became so prevalent. And I think now that students have so many more options, I'm seeing fewer and fewer females in my classes. My classes are overwhelmingly white, overwhelmingly male, and I don't necessarily have a solution for that, but it is an issue I seem to have noticed and would love to have more diversity in my classes. Usually the few female students I have are the best students in the class, and so I'd love to see more diversity in my classes again.
College Credit Plus is in a unique position of straddling the fence between secondary education and post-secondary education. And the trends in post-secondary education are alarming when it comes to diversity. And so we're trending toward this direction where they don't want divisive topics covered. And yet the students come to us, and I have to make it very, very clear as they sit in our offices with their parents that they will be exposed to divisive topics, and we will thoroughly explore those topics. And the curriculum will not change because the student is 16 years old and homeschooled and whatever else. And so this has been front of mind for us to be able to make sure that that's communicated, that everybody signs off on it. The state has now 3 or 4 forms that parents and students have to sign to be sure that the students recognize that everybody recognizes that they will be exposed to diverse and sometimes divisive topics. And I have made sure in my own office that I have safe zone signage, that students are aware that it's a safe and friendly place, and welcoming for whatever color and whatever gender and whatever identification that they feel and that they go by. So we do the best we can to make sure our students all feel welcome and encouraged.
In financial aid, obviously, our main focus is finance. And so I think, especially at our college, we see very vastly different students. We see the traditional student who is 18, lives at home with mom and dad, receives support from mom and dad, and that may be a straightforward question and answer when it comes to a national application like the FAFSA. But we also deal with students who are independent, and have been on their own, but yet still have to place parent information on the FAFSA, or even the student who may be at risk of homelessness or in a very specific situation that application doesn't cater to. So in the financial aid department, it's our job to help the student understand that even though the application itself does not necessarily in a straightforward way include them, that it actually does include them, and that sometimes that takes intervention from our office to be able to determine what is their specific need and how does that differ from the person sitting right next to them in the classroom, and making sure that they understand that we are here to facilitate them getting an equal playing field as far as having the necessary finances to be able to sit in that seat on a daily basis. And then also the college has really focused a lot on the needs that the students have outside of the classroom. So students with, food insecurity or the inability to deal with an emergency situation that requires funding, such as a flat tire on the way to school. So putting in place things like our food pantry, our clothes closet, we have an emergency grant that would be able to help those students deal with the things outside the classroom so that inside the classroom they can still be focusing on their studies and have that sense of equity to know that even though my situation may be different than the person next to me, and I come from a rural space and they come from an inner city space, that we're all here and we're able to learn in the same environment together. So even though that may not seem like a focus of the financial aid department, we try to make it a holistic financial conversation, not just here's your money for school, good luck, have a nice day. So we've had the Emergency Grant Fund for a while. It's a partnership with our local United Way where they support a fund for students to have up to a certain amount for specific instances. So I think that's pretty widespread that most of our campus is aware of that. But I think the faculty are also good at trying to point them in the right direction. So starting with financial aid, have you exhausted all of your federal financial aid abilities first? Or potentially saying, would it be better to go from this other route so that you're not borrowing and doing things like that? So I feel like our faculty are very aware of the potential resources. And if they don't know all the resources, they certainly know who to send people to, and we can get them to the resources that they need. So I think that they do a very good job of that.
One of the challenges that we have with DEI is that with our student usernames and the in the IT database, is that once they're logged in initially as whatever name they're under, then that's it. So if a student wants to change their name because they're not comfortable being called by their birth name, or even if a student gets married and they change their last name, they're still they're still stuck. So hopefully someday we'll be able to address that.
In the PTA program, there's usually the same type of student. We have lots of younger students now, some that have very minimal, have a change of career. We have single moms and single dads. So we have a very rigorous application with high standards. But once they get in, they're now all on the same playing field. We are working on that as faculty to make, once they get into the program, make it equitable for them from single moms, single dads, the younger student, the older student, from religion, culture, sexual. We have to be able to change that, switch over to where it's rigorous. You have to meet these standards to get in, but then once you're in, we need to keep you. We want to keep you in. And we have to change our ways to make it equitable. So we used to have a very firm policy. You miss class, deduct 5 points. Well, we have single moms and single dads now. So we really can't do that anymore. And just learning where to be gracious and make the playing field more equitable so they can be successful, and not just where it used to be young students all the time coming in as their first career. We have a lot of change. I was that student where I changed careers very late in the game, late in life. And it was very hard to meet the rigorous standards with all the other classmates that were 15, 20 years younger than me. And so very stressful environment. So looking at that situation in these 2 years to make it more equitable for those students that come in from very different backgrounds.
Yeah, I do think that a challenge for faculty, at least for me, is finding that balance between equitable treatment versus equal treatment. Because, from my upbringing, I was used to equal, try to make it a level playing field so it's fair to everybody. But the more I've been involved in DEI and just education in general, I realize that sometimes that's just not the best way or the most practical way. So sometimes making exceptions is valid.
One change that we made recently in our office is, in addition to our staff, we hired a young woman of color, and she has lots of beautiful tattoos. And there is a noticeable difference in the reaction of the students towards her, as opposed to just all the same, previously it's all women, we're all white, we're all kind of middle-aged. There's a definite difference in the reaction that the students have towards her. They're much more willing to speak to her. Especially students of color feel very, very comfortable approaching her, and it's been a very beneficial experience.
I think something that I see students struggle with is sometimes painting themselves with a brush of inequity, where they think, well, my situation's too complicated, or I don't want to share what's going on, and then sometimes struggle because of that. And so I think as a college that we have started to improve, or we're taking steps to improve, the staff and faculty being able to sort of ask out the potential problems. So in other words, you may see somebody who, they seem hesitant to kind of tell their story, and you could help them if you just knew what was going on. So basically kind of pulling students out of their sense of, painting themselves with that brush has been a really important step, I think, in getting students connected to the tools that they need, and making it more equitable for them.
I definitely think one of the challenges is getting students comfortable with asking for help and receiving help. I mean, some students are comfortable with just telling you everything about what's going on in their lives, but others, there seems to be a stigma where they feel like, especially the students who are like 18 or 19 and they're trying to transition from adolescence to adulthood, and so they're kind of doing college for the first time, and they're thinking, well, I should be able to do all this on my own. And so they're reluctant to own up to if they're struggling. And so a culture that we're trying to change here at the college is to try and not only make students more aware of all the help resources that are available to them, but also trying to change the norm so more people feel comfortable that it is okay to ask for help. It's a strength. It's a strength to know when to ask for help. But I also tell students the essence of genius is also to know when to ask for help.
One of the things that we do pride ourselves on up in the Welcome Center is really trying to learn all the students' names that are in and out of the lobby and make them comfortable, because we do actually eventually get a lot of students coming to us with a lot of very personal issues, personal questions, and we need them to be able to confide in us and ask us questions. And as far as comfort level, like middle-aged woman is working for me up there, because I've had more than one person person say, these kids all talk to you like you're their mom. We did have one really great compliment once. It was a year or so ago when I was referring a student for some additional help. And he said, well, the person who's helped me the most, he was saying to the person I was referring to, was her. And it broke my heart because all I had done was learn his name and consistently acknowledge him. But that is then what I put out to my student workers, like, this is really important. Just what we're doing here is really important.